morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I love it. It's like being in a classroom. Good morning, teacher. Yes. My former life, I was a teacher, so these skills just kind of come to me. So today we're going to talk about low maintenance, minimal maintenance perennials, right? Kind of confusing when you're in the garden center and you're walking around looking at all the plants and you're thinking, oh, that's a nice yellow flower, and oh, I like that, purple's a good color, and grass is good. But how do you choose, right? It's hard to choose, absolutely. And you kind of feel like in a garden center that you should sort of come in, plant ready, right? So a couple of things you can do before you come to the garden center is to kind of think about where this plant is going to go, right? Is it going in a hot spot? Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it really shady? Are we under a tree? Or next to a fence? Kind of have that location in mind, because when the garden center employees are trying to help you, of course, they don't really know what your yard looks like or what your spot looks like that you're trying to fill. So the more information you can bring to us, the happier everybody is in the end, right? Because then we can cut the chase. We don't have to give you the grand tour. We can just give you what you're looking for and then hopefully satisfy that is our goal anyway. So that's kind of a hard thing, right? Thinking about the place. Yeah, that's a hard thing. And then you come to the garden center and you see all these plants in like pots like this size. Some have flowers. Some are kind of new, but you can't decide whether you like it or don't like it. With perennials, you kind of have to imagine the future a little bit, right? Because when you're looking at something in a 4-inch pot, it's hard to imagine what it's going to look like. Good old White Nancy, right? How big does White Nancy get? Like this big, right? Given the opportunity. But she looks so cute. It's a lamium. Yeah, she looks so cute in her pot. Purple dragon. White Nancy's cousin from the second brother. All related, of course. So trying to kind of imagine what the future is going to be is helpful for perennials. Another thing that's really helpful are these things. Right? The plant tags. There is absolutely no shame in picking up a plant tag and reading it. If you just kind of watch garden center employees pick these up and read them all the time, right? It's impossible to memorize all those details. Is that 6 inches or 8 inches or 1.5 meters or how many? I mean, why wouldn't we use the information on the back of the tag? So easy. So what kind of information is usually on the back of the tag? Height, spread. If you're doing a whole new bed, you need to know distance between, right? So that's going to be on the plant tag. Sun or shade will be on the plant tag. And anything you don't find on the plant tag, you find a friendly staff member, right? And we'll help you figure it out. Make sense? I love this. Awesome. Another thing you want to do when you're planting is you want to plant with some new soil. Right? Or if you're putting it in an existing garden bed, imagine, existing garden bed. Mine doesn't look as good as this, but it sort of has big clumps in the middle of it. When you're planting, hate that. When you're planting in your garden bed, it's always a good idea to add some fresh stuff, right? My favorite. Does anybody know about the magic orange bag? Sea soil. It's the only thing I use in my garden to kind of refurbish it. I use it in my pots. I put it on my grass, well, my husband's grass. It's not my grass, I'm the flower person. But it's really good for rejuvenating, benefiting, adding extra natural wonderfulness to your garden, and it's organic. So if you want to put it in your vegetable garden, perfect, right? You want to put it in your planters with your tomatoes. Great combination, right? Certainly my favorite thing. So with sea soil, and I'll pass them around. So you can kind of see this is sea soil in this pot. Because I know gardeners, right? Gardeners can only last for about 5 or 10 minutes without smelling dirt or touching dirt or getting their hands dirty. So.
My sister-in-law was putting when she cleaned her fish tank,
Right.
she put that water into her tomatoes.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the thing with sea soil is that it's thank you so much. It's a Canadian company, so I'm obviously a big fan of Canadian companies. Family owned and operated, also love that, obviously, by where I work. It's very important to me. They take leftovers from the fishing industry, from the forestry industry, and compost them together for 4 or 5 years. So did anybody smell like the fishy? Nothing, right? And I have 2 terriers at home, and trust me, if this smelled like fish, they'd be rolling all over my flower bed. So it's got the benefits of fish without that fish smell, because nobody really wants that in their garden. Well, I don't. I'm guessing you don't as well.
I put fish fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody gave me fish
Oh, nice.
fertilizer. It attracts all the
All the,
Don't do
yeah.
blood meal.
Yeah, blood meal, bone meal, right? They're all, it's that scented. So that's why I like fish soil, because you get the benefit without the additional features. Let's put it that way. So if we've got our garden bed, I usually add, if it's in a pot and I'm planting, I usually use like 1/3 sea soil to 2/3 leftover soil from last year. You could use a half if you want, but 1/3 is lots. If we're talking about our garden beds, which again, visual imagination, right? I always add some to the whole, right? I'm just one of those gardeners that kind of throws lots in, and then you want to make sure you mix it up though. Because if you put all of your good soil and just sort of leave it in the pile in the middle, the roots are never going to expand out, right? They're just going to stay in that happy little zone. Well, who wouldn't, right? We'd all be the same. So you want to make sure you kind of mix it in with your existing soil. And then it comes to planting time. So I'm just going to, should we go back? Let's go back to Nancy and Purple Dragon and all the rest of that. So to start, I always make a hole of what I think, and then I set the pot in, and 9 times out of 10, it's not deep enough, and so then I make it deeper. Because you want to make sure when you're planting it that it's at the same level, right? Very few things like to be planted deeper. Suffocates, right? Like if somebody sort of put a bunch of sheets over your head, it's the same kind of idea where you're sort of suffocating the roots. So you would like to plant it at the same level. And inevitably, when you pop it out of the pot, it's going to look like it's full of roots, which is good, right? I think that's a good sign. Not a good sign, though, is to plant it just like that. You want to make sure that you're teasing the roots away. And you can be brutal. So I always disturb the bottom. I do a little bit on the sides. And if it's kind of packed around the top, I loosen that up too.
No, is there anything wrong with using a X-Acto knife or something to cut?
Oh, you certainly could. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's harder.
Whatever works, right? Absolutely. X-Acto knives will work. I'd probably sterilize it first, like soapy water, or just in case. At least in my house, I don't know where that box cutter's been, so. So we stick our little buddy in there. Fill around, backfill. There's all kinds of, in the gardening world, there's so many fancy words, right? That all mean the same thing. Press it down a little bit to make sure that you're getting air pockets out. It's always a good idea. The other thing I like to do is make like a little moat. If I'm doing a big flower bed, probably not, but if I'm just putting in some new little plant, I like to make a little moat around it. Why would I want to do that? Any ideas? Yeah, definitely. It's all about water. And I do this with my perennials, I do this with trees and shrubs. It just kind of focuses the water a little bit more on the root system. And then as soon as I plant, I water it in. Again, because I don't want any air pockets in there. I want to make sure that all of those are away, out of the way, for sure. And then, of course, it's beautiful, right? In a couple of days. Other things I can do to ensure success. On your seats, you all had a little brochure that kind of looked like this. Has anybody ever used Mike? Yeah? Did you like it? Was it successful?
I don't know whether it was successful or not. Who knows?
Plant isn't dead yet, though?
No.
Okay, well, that's a good sign. That is a good sign. So there's different kinds of Mike depending on what you're planting. There's one for veggies and herbs. There's one for trees and shrubs. This is the flower one in the bright orange package. So the advantage of Mike is that it increases your root zone. Because obviously, it's great to have a very healthy plant, but if you're going to put it in bad soil or soil that hasn't been enriched with anything, probably not going to be too successful, right? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be moving my perennials every year and replanting them and adding extra things, and I want to make sure they get off to a really good start from the very beginning. Mike would be one of those ways, and it's so simple to use. So simple to use. We can do the demo. For those of you that haven't seen what it looks like, we'll put, it's a beneficial fungus. And usually when I say fungus, everybody goes, oh, mushrooms. It's better than that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So again, touch it, smell it, all those wonderful things. And I really can't think of anything that's easier to use.
Is there
I know.
perlite in with this?
There is, yeah, a little bit of vermiculite, a little bit of perlite, and then the beneficial fungus is mixed in there as well. So it's kind of innocuous looking, right? How I use it. I do the same kind of thing with my beautiful lamium. I love playing in the dirt, right? It doesn't matter. I'm a gardener, that's the thing it is. So I make my little hole, and the quantity is always on the side of the package for how much you need. So it depends on the size of the pot that you're using. For this little guy, I'm just gonna use like a little bit, right? A couple of tablespoons. Sprinkle some in the hole. Massage. Because the only way the beneficial fungus will be beneficial is if it touches the root system, and that's what we're after. So a little rub, a little poke, plant it in. Yeah, and same as before, right? Backfill it in. Next time. I've never met a gardener who isn't always hoping that an open spot happens to plant up. And my moat and my water, same as before. Yeah, so if you haven't tried Mike, I recommend giving it a try. It certainly works with perennials really, really well.
Can you put that in the soil afterwards?
On top of it, it doesn't work as well as a top dressing because it needs to touch the root system. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to top dress, I mean, you could always use compost or fertilizer or bone meal, blood meal, all those wonderful things. Does anybody fertilize perennials?
I do.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of fertilizer? What do you like to use?
I do Miracle Grow.
I like when people say Miracle Grow. They're so embarrassed. There's nothing wrong with Miracle Grow. Nothing wrong at all. Not at all. Oh, it's okay. I'll get it after. Thank you. So I'm sort of a person who likes to fertilize my perennials maybe twice a year, and that's it. I'm not sort of a constant add fertilizer to my watering can. I do that with my annual planters, tomatoes, you know, my veggie garden, that kind of thing. With my perennial gardens, I'm all about slow release and mixed pebbles, right? The advantage being that I can just do it all at once, water it in or dig it in, and then I can forget about it. And it's done. This will be the best lamium we've ever had by the time it's got all this. Yeah. It won't be dead. We'll have to put something on our... It'll be so happy it'll take over this container in no time at all. So even scruffing the soil around a little bit and then watering it in works just as well. So I usually fertilize my beds early spring. You know, I don't really pick a date. It's sort of whenever I have a day off from the garden center, I'm out fertilizing my flower beds. And I do it again in July, kind of middle of July, beginning of July, and then I leave it. You want to be really careful with Calgary's crazy weather, as we're all very familiar with. If we fertilize too late, our plants get all hyped up, for lack of a better word, on fertilizer, and start to grow, and we could get a frost, or we could get, you know, some kind of killing nemesis. So I always say that like mid-July is the last time I fertilize. I don't August long weekend if I'm pushing it, but I try really hard to get it done before that. Yeah, just because obviously I've spent all this money and time and effort into growing my plants, I don't want them to kill themselves off in the middle of the winter. Not what I'm after. Makes sense? Cool. So I've got some options on the table as far as plant material goes, depending on what you're after. So in the garden center, we're all organized to try to make it a little bit easier for you to shop. So we try to put similar plants that are looking for the same kind of material together. So we keep all of our hot and dry plants together. We keep our wet plants together. Keep our low-growing shade and low-growing sun together. You know, just to take out, again, some of that wandering around the garden center stress, right? Because it is stressful. I totally understand that. And I'm a plant person. I get that it's stressful. So I think we'll start with the sunny ones, which are on this side. Who's a lover of grass? I love grass.
I love grass, but I'm always worried that it's going to spread underground and it's going to be hard to get around.
Yeah. I think grass has a little bit of a negative reputation because a lot of people have planted the grass that kind of runs over their flower bed, right? Takes over the universe. Most of the grasses that we sell are more clumping grasses, so they're not going to run. Certainly not to that degree. Probably the most popular one, at least for us as far as questions are concerned, is Carl. Our buddy Carl. Everybody loves Carl. So that's the green grass that you see that gets about 6 or 7 feet tall, has gorgeous flowery plumes on it. Wheat stalks, as this little girl told me yesterday. It's wheat, it's not grass. Love that. Stunning, right? Bless you. Likes it warm, might be a bit of a drinker initially until it gets its root established, but love Carl. But he does get to be fairly large. So same idea would be overdam or avalanche. The reason I love this one, I'm a variegated person. I mean, I have lots of Carl in my flower bed, but I really like interest and more than just green. So overdam gives me little spring highlights of pink. And then we've got that kind of green and white variegation. And not as tall. Only gets to be about, in my yard, about 4.5 feet tall. And it's 3 or 4 years old, so manageable, right? And I grow mine in my rock garden, so it doesn't get any special attention. Hi.
How do you take care of it over winter?
I always leave mine over the winter because I like the little feathery plumes on top. So I leave it in the winter, and then when I start to see it sprout in the spring, I cut it right back. Right down. Yep. 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 I mean, you could leave. The other option would be to leave 4 or 6 inches on the bottom so that it acts as a snow catcher. If you didn't want to keep the. Oh no, I do. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. My dogs eat it in the winter. They play in the flower bed. So yeah, I love them. And it gets kind of that hoarfrost look to it, and it's hard to find winter interest, right? When it's all white, and grasses are good for that, I think. If overdam's too tall, any of the fescues, the little blue fescues, I mean, they're so cute, and they get tiny little wheat-looking flowers on them too. Easy for a border. This one's blue fescue, I believe. Elijah blue, yeah. Yeah. Stays nice and neat and compact. Good for a little border.
Does it
Yeah.
spread a lot?
Nope. Essentially, this is about as big as it gets. Just like that. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Totally love it. Not that there aren't hundreds of other grasses to choose from as well, right? But those are probably my favorite 3, and I will absolutely leave them up here after. So if you want to write names and spelling and all that, you're more than welcome to come up and do that. Other sun lovers. Kind of my go-to. Yeah, sage, salvia. This one's caradonna. It's a huge plant family. So you've got lots of different heights to it, short little border ones, kind of average size. This is the tallest version of it. The one in my yard is probably 5 feet tall almost, 4.5 feet tall, with the flower stalks and everything. But I like caradonna because it's got really dark stems. So you notice it, a little bit more of a highlight plant. Really well. Yeah, really well. I don't stake mine or anything, and I'm on a green space. So yeah, it does really well. The nice thing about salvia too is that it often blooms at this time of the year, give or take. If you remove all the dead flowers, it'll often do one more bloom. Not as fantastic as the first one usually, but it'll certainly bloom twice. Because that's hard with perennials, isn't it? Trying to find that magical perennial that blooms from spring to fall. It's hard to find something that blooms for a long time. Really hard. Salvia is a good one. I'm also a huge fan of sedums and stone crop, either as an upright form or as a smaller little creeper ground cover. They're so easy. Mine essentially grows in a gravel bed. It's kind of like the back lane. I threw in 1 bag of sea soil 8 years ago, and that's all I've ever done to it. And it's probably twice this big now. Gets beautiful flowers on it in the fall, so that would be something that, you could plan for later in the season. And even the little ground covery one changes color too, so it'll go sort of reddy, orangey. So many varieties of this. This one is Elsie's Gold, which is the variegated version. So if you're familiar with like Autumn Joy, same kind of family, just a little bit. Not much taller than that. I think it maxes out at about 18 inches, 20 inches. So not as tall as Autumn Joy does. And compact. So if you've got, windy spots or whatever, it's not going to snap on you. Poplar fluff. With those guys. Probably about 10 days ago, this was the hottest topic around because everybody in their yard had cushion spurge blooming. So it forms a gorgeous mass, 3 feet, 4 feet across, full of yellow flowers, literally like the picture. And it doesn't take long for it to do that too. So it's instant yellow. I don't know, there's something about yellow in the spring that I love. It's just sort of a happy, sunshiny color. This is called cushion spurge. cushion, like, I could give you the long Latin name, but yeah. Yeah. Spurge has a little bit of a negative connotation, right? With Fish Creek and the weedy version of spurge. And this one will self-seed, but they're so simple just to pick out that I don't really consider it a nuisance, personally. But stunning yellow color, and it goes right down. So it'll sort of do its wonderful yellow mass, literally looks like a huge ball, and then it'll disappear and then come back sometimes. So it's a little bit like bleeding hearts. If you have those in your yard, they kind of do that too, where they sort of die back and then come back again. So, but I don't know, you don't get that yellow very often. Hi. Oh, mine's about 18 inches. Yeah, this one says 12 to 18. So, yeah. Kind of depends on the year. Like sometimes my bleeding hearts work the same way, where sometimes they die right back. You can always trim it off if it starts to go gangly on you. Sometimes they split in the middle when they get bigger, but you can hack them back.
Are bleeding hearts for the sunny area or shady?
It's sort of half and half. So morning sun is what they like, probably 6 to 8 hours of morning sun, but yeah. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
I should have brought some of those, but some of those. A couple other highlights while we're on the world of sun. Sun and tall. And this is sort of average, average height. Any idea? Joe Pye. So with Joe Pye, he shows up a little bit later. He's not going to come up the first thing. We get lots of phone calls about Joe Pye. It's not up. It's already June. It's like it should start peaking up in June. Right? It doesn't come out first thing of the ground, but it grows 7 to 10 feet tall in a season. So yeah, I know, amazing, right? Like when we get these in at the end of the year, it's sort of, we're tying them up and we're trying to control them so that you can get them in your vehicles. Because they do, yeah, their height for sure.
Pink flower.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful pink flowers. Loved by insects and butterflies and bees and all those wonderful things. Love Joe Pye. I'm also a big lover of peonies. And the Perennial Lot girls and I were having the peony discussion because they're just starting to bloom right now. And you're either a lover of peonies because they bloom like crazy really early, and then once they lose their flowers, to me they're a beautiful shrub. But to some of the other girls it's like, oh, it just sits there doing nothing for most of the season until the leaves change color in the fall. Personally, I'm a fan of peonies, right? I think they fill the space really well. They act just like a shrub. The benefit is that you can knock them all back and mulch them and cover them up, or just leave them in the wintertime. So they fill the space and then they disappear, so you can shovel the snow on it or whatever.
We have to cut them back in the fall.
Yeah.
when we get the-
Yes, they certainly do. Peonies are, and I think that's another reason why people are kind of nervous about peonies. There's a blooming situation, right? If you plant peonies too deep or too shallow, they don't flower well. So people get nervous about buying peonies. There's, yeah, the disease part of that people get a little bit nervous about. No, that's just kind of an association, yeah, where they're sticky and the ants crawl over them. So people who aren't into bugs kind of think that, that's not the plant for me. Perennials are like that, right? Everyone has their own loves and hates, and that's okay. You don't have to follow by any stretch of the means. I'm a huge lover of Ito peonies. So there's lots of different categories of peonies, but to me, Ito peonies grow a little bit faster. I don't have to do anything with them but fertilize them and water them. And the flower is gigantic. Like, they do literally get that large. And stunning colors. In a garden peony, you can't get yellows and oranges and multicolors, but in these kind of peonies, you can. So you can get a white peony with a red, dark pink center to it, or a double yellow, or kind of a lilac-y outside with a striking purple center. Like there's so many combinations of them. And they grow quickly. But like any kind of perennial, the first couple of years that you put it in, I mean, it takes a while to mature, right? You're not going to get exactly what the picture shows you the very first year. Usually takes 3 or 4 years before it looks, you know, like the gardening magazines that we all read. Oh, look at this. My yard never looks like this. So it is a little investment in patience. Something new to try as the last feature of our sun. And I'm not going to say the Latin because none of us will remember it. If you're interested, just pull the tag out a little bit. So this is called red birds in a tree. I know, but isn't that a strange, I know, red birds in a tree. We had a few of these in a couple of years ago, and all the plant geeks bought them, of course, because it was new, and that's what us gardeners do. We like to buy all the new stuff. The girls that bought them the first year, which wasn't me, but I have asked them, they have convinced me to buy one this year, is that they've got these, you can kind of see them starting, little scarlet trumpet flowers. Hummingbirds love them. Love them. Stays compact, doesn't break open on you, doesn't fall apart. So, like I said, I don't have any personal experience with it, but I certainly trust the ladies that work here for sure. So something new to try if you haven't.
Is that the height that it gets?
Yep. About 2 feet. Yeah, you're welcome.
And what is the Latin?
Really, now that I'm recording, you want me to say the Latin? It's, where is it on here? Scorfilaria. Yeah. That's why I thought it's easier. Red birds in a tree is so much easier to understand. It's not. They do. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And because it's so new, I haven't personally done much research on it as the, you know, the other Latin. But that's a good project to look that up. So that's kind of the sun choices. Shady spots, which are always a bit of a challenge, right? And I think the go-to for shade, for me anyway, hostas. Here, let's turn it this way. The other thing I love about hostas is that they come in so many different. That's the new curly fries, is that one. So they come, like, to me, if you're going to have a plant family, it should have a huge diversity to it, right? So you can have everything from giant leaves to tiny little blue mouse ears, which literally doesn't get any bigger than this, to curly fries, to white variegation, yellow variegation. They have flowers to them, but the fans of are like, flowers. I know lots of gardeners even take the flowers off because they think it ruins the appearance of the leaves. But they do have very pretty lavender, light pink flowers to them. Supremely easy for the shade. And most of them now will take some sun as well. So they're not just kind of hide under your tree plants anymore. Stability. Absolutely.
How much? Morning?
Morning sun is probably best. It's usually the heat of the day where they flatten themselves out a little bit. But you can cheat the system. If you give it a little more water, that will keep it perkier longer. Yeah, I love hostas. Love them, love them. Another little shady wonder. Yeah, Brunera, another huge family. Brunera, Brunnera, right? Latin. It's a language that everyone has their own interpretation of. I think it's one of those stunning plants in the shade because you do get like silvery foliage to it. And if you've got that in a shady spot, there's something about white or silver that reflects the light so nicely. And the fact that it gets these cute little blue forget-me-not type flowers to it in the spring, I mean, that's just adorable to me.
Is that Jack Frost?
This is Sea Heart, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many. And every year they seem to be coming out with more and more looking glass and, yep, on and on. but very cute. If you've got more of like a moisture area, that's also a challenge. My go-to for moisture is always ligularias, right? They'll take some sun, but with too much sun, they sort of look like, well, they wilt. I was gonna say a wet Kleenex, then I thought that is what they look like. They flatten right out. They don't look very wonderful, but in a moist location, stunning, absolutely stunning. Huge variety to go from as well. So you've got little rocket over here, or the rocket, they're almost the same, just height separates them out, with these beautiful yellow poker-like flowers. The other side of the family has sort of rounder leaves, and as you can kind of see on the picture, more of a daisy type flower to it. So certainly options.
Can those go in planter boxes?
Sure.
Maybe 3 feet deep?
Absolutely. You can always put perennials in a planter box. They won't make it through the winter in the planter box though.
Oh, they won't.
You'll have to kind of tuck them. If you've got a garage, I overwinter some perennials in the garage, or even if you just sink that pot in a piece of dirt somewhere so that it can freeze over the winter. But they won't, like a pot out on your deck, it'll never make, our Chinooks really disrupt that. It warms up and it cools and it warms up. So the plant starts to grow and then it gets frozen. So, yeah, it's a challenge, for sure. And shady ground covers. Here's another plant that's full of debate. It does have to be controlled. So they call it goatweed for a reason, right? I mean, to me, it's the most apropos plant name I'm aware of. It will take over the world, really. I'm pretty sure that that will be left when all the rest of us are not. It's aggressive. I would easily say it's aggressive. But if you have that spot between houses, you know, that's sort of blocked by the driveway on one side, and then you've got the sidewalk, and you can kind of pen it in a little bit. Phenomenal. You don't have to do anything. It's got that variegated foliage to it, so you get that little bit of sparkle. It's not like green. And it gets cute little white flowers on it. So, in the right spot, I think it's beautiful. I wouldn't be mixing it in my flower garden, though, like with other plants, because that will be your lifelong project, pulling it out. Another little treasure. I'm a real fan of sweet woodruff because I think it's so cute. Sweet woodruff. Gallium's the woodruff. This guy, I'm pretty sure it's just the regular one. So they don't get much taller than this, like 12 inches.
Do they spread quite a bit?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. About the same, yeah. Probably twice that size, like on either side. I tuck mine under my trees, so that's kind of one of those stick under your tree that sits under my Schubert and blooms and flowers without me doing anything extra to it. And the leaves are really interesting. I know it's kind of hard to appreciate. We can pass if you haven't seen sweet woodruff before. The leaves are just really interesting to look at, right? And then the flower kind of peeks up from the center of the leaf, so I don't know. I'm a fan, what can I say? I like it. It does, yep. Yeah, it's a really good ground cover though, I think, for, yeah. Mm-hmm. You bet. Yeah. Are you getting sea soil scent going over there?
Trust me, sometimes that's not an advantage.
True. And this might be the last one I'd like to talk about is Macadamia. Not only does it have kind of an interesting name to it. Has anybody grown this one before? I highly recommend it. If you haven't tried it, mine's been in my northwest exposure for 3 years. It's probably this big. Doesn't get much taller than what you see in front of you. flowers before the leaves come out. So it gets cute little, I was trying to find one that had little flower. There's a little dead seed head in here. It gets tiny little flowers, little pinky, tiny, tiny little flowers. I'll pass so you can take a look. And what I really love about it is you get the flowers, then you get the bright green leaves that are quite shiny, and I'm all about contrast. Then in the fall, it literally turns into like a maple red, orangey color. And it's absolutely stunning. And like I said, mine doesn't get lots of sun. It doesn't, cook in my backyard. It just gets, whatever, 4 hours.
This picture that's on here is the fall.
Is the fall color, yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And it's just stunning. Because again, sometimes it's hard in Calgary to get that red fall color, right? Again, from the gardening magazines of Ontario and Quebec, and where they show us that wonderful fall color. But if you haven't tried, it's very well behaved. It spreads a little bit, but never gets much taller than that. So, and it likes shade. Yeah, I'd probably go with partial shade for best fall color, but.
My backyard faces north and I've got so many trees that I got
Right.
lots of shade or
Partial shade. Yeah, I'd give it a shot. It's my new favorite plant. I just find it fascinating that you can go from little pink flowers to bright red at the end of the season. That's always really interesting to look at. Did anybody have any questions? I don't want to. I know, as soon as someone asks, right, it's like shutdown mode. Nope, no questions. Totally done.
In my backyard, it's a north facing,
Okay.
we have to get rid of some trees.
Mm-hmm.
The life of me, I can't remember what they're called.
No, that's okay. No, that's all right.
They're very tall, very bushy trees. They're not native to Calgary, apparently. But anyway, I was thinking what would be good to replace them with? Something low, we've got an 8-foot fence, something
Right.
lower, but bushy.
Kind of bush.
6-foot fence.
So we had 6-foot fence,
6-foot fence, north
sunny, shady,
Get them on
half and half.
Part of it, half and half.
Okay.
I don't know what more I can tell you. We don't want to put trees back because we've got
Right.
gas lines on either side.
Right.
Which is why we have to get rid of the trees. But we're looking at maybe leaving it for a year. We've got rose bushes, we've
Okay.
got coral bells, we've got cornflowers in there. We're wondering what else we could put that would kind of meld.
Oh, all kinds of things. I can show you all sorts of options after if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very adaptable
Good.
spot. No problem.
Do you think, I have the front yard that gets a lot of sun, but I've dug up all the grass.
Right.
So I'm putting in a
Nice.
rock garden.
Love.
So I've been observing how the sun is acting,
Right.
and it's really high until about 1 o'clock, and then, because the house shades it,
Gotcha.
and then there's trees on the street that are going to shade it now. Will hostas go in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
I'll give it
They'll
a
go
whirl.
just about anywhere. And there's so much variety with them too, right? So you could either stick with a theme or just do
Yeah, because I love
a smorgasbord. I know. How can you not love hostas? There's something for everyone in that plant family, I think.
We've got a space in the front yard that's right against the house, north side. So it's got kind of an overhang. So
Right.
it's inside.
So it's pretty
Got
dry.
pines in there right now, and I hate them. So I'd like to put in some kind of greenery that would stay green all winter
Right.
and not be too high, like maybe like that.
But still kind of like a shrub kind of look to it. I'd go with yews. Yew. So there's sort of a straight up, like there's a Morden yew. There's also a golden version that I just put in my yard. I'm, in love with them. They'll certainly take lots of shade. You'll probably have to still water them really well in the fall because with them being evergreen, you want to make sure that they've got enough moisture to last. They kind of come up as a vase shape. We've got some out in the tree lot I can show you too. If you want to, the visual is always so much better, right? Yeah, of course.
I'm
Oh,
looking
wow.
at this one and it says zone 4 to 9 in USDA.
Mm.
So how do you compare directly from US
From
to,
US to Canada?
Canada.
That's an excellent question.
I'm sorry?
It's supposed to be the same.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
No, they're not.
but they're off by one. So that's a very good point with plant tags, right? Sometimes you read the back of the plant tag and it's got USDA on it. USDA zone 4, it's Canadian zone 3. It's always, yeah, yep, yep. You go from, so if it says US 4, it's Canadian 3. And Calgary is what zone? It's like the perennial test. 3.5. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It goes everywhere from a 2 if you're open exposure and you've got lots of wind and the elements, or like myself, I live on a green space, to protected. So it could be a zone 4, it could be a zone 5. I would caution you to kind of, look at what your yard looks like. If you've got protection like fencing or a shed, or it's probably warmer in front of that than you think it is.
When you're looking at the tags and it says, 6 inch apart, that's from the center of the plant to the center of the plant. But if it's a US plant, a USDA plant,
Right.
you could probably make it closer because it's Calgary and we only have 3 months to grow things in.
Yeah, it's certainly not a bad idea. I throw a little bit of caution. It depends on what visual look you're after. I'm the kind of gardener where I like space around my plants because I think disease and fungus, like there's all, if you plant things too close together, you're sort of increasing your odds of stress and fungus and bacteria issues, or insects, or any of that. So I tend to go a little bit more generous when I'm spacing, and then if it starts getting too cozy, then I just get my pruners out and sort of make sure that I've got air movement. But, I mean, it depends on, again, the look. If you're doing a hedge or something, that's obviously a different situation, right? Because you want that look, that green fence look. Oh.
What's that on the ground behind your beside you?
The asparagus ferns?
Is that
These guys? Yep, ponytail fern, or it's an annual. You could grow it as a house plant in Calgary, but they are very pretty.
I've got an asparagus fern, but it looks totally different.
Yeah, they get little berries on them too, white flowers and little red berries on them. I'd grow it as a house plant or a container kind of plant, for sure. No. Well, thank you, ladies, all for coming. Thank you so much. That was great. And if I can help you with anything else, don't be shy. That's why we're here.